Welcome to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show with me, Jess Tomlinson. Interviews to inspire a new movement of leaders and entrepreneurs. The ones who lead with vulnerability and authenticity, stand in visibility, allowing themselves to truly be seen, are fierce and playful and sexy. Choose business as a spiritual practice. Seek collaboration versus competition. No, giving back is not an option. It's a necessity. They do it their way. They radiate. They rise. Now, let's rise together. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Radiantpreneur Rising Show. I'm Jess Tomlinson, and this is a super special interview. I'm so excited to be doing a threesome with two of my favorite people. Like, not only are they biz besties, but they're soul sisters. We have all been through so much together. They are my Las Vegas crew, and we've known each other for like, I don't know, more than 4 years. 4 years. I can't keep track of time. They probably know better than me, but I am so pleased to introduce you to Melissa Harman and Adria DeCorte. Thank you, ladies, for being here with me.
Oh, it's so much fun. Thanks so much for having me.
So excited.
Yay. I feel like I should have suggested that we all have wine. I mean, it's 3:00 and we're recording. But if any of you know, or you followed Adria, Melissa, and myself, we had a program that we ran together twice called the Fun and Fierce Coach. And we used to do like Facebook Lives and stuff with wine. Facebook Lives and trainings, and that was like kind of one of our fun little things. So it feels a little bit weird, like sacrilegious, to like not have wine as we're doing this. Yeah. Anyways, we love to like gather around beverages, and we still have monthly like masterminds and stuff. But I wanted to bring you ladies together and all of you who are watching to really have a bigger conversation. I was telling the girls that I've been having this calling in my heart to really talk more about what it's like to evolve as an entrepreneur and what that journey is really like, because I don't think it gets talked about enough. And so that is kind of like the main thing that we're going to be diving into today. And first, though, I feel like I want to ask the two ladies the question that I normally ask everybody at the beginning, and either of you can go first, whichever feels most called. But just share a little bit to connect and have the audience get to know you about what visibility edges are you leaning into right now in your own life and business.
Ooh, what visibility edges? So that's a great question. And one of the hardest things for me in my business is being on camera, sharing, creating content. You know, I've always been a behind the scenes kind of girl. My first business was a product where I would just make the product and sell it. And it's a very different business. And so what's funny is, like, I believe in leaning into your strengths. And so I've relied heavily on building funnels and passive income and sales pages and all of those more behind the scenes things. But then I feel like you miss that connection with your audience and your community. And it's just a really great way to share your message. And so what's funny is, for the past like 6 or so months, I've been hiding a little bit. And right around the time that you asked us to do this show, I had really made a decision to just put myself out there, be more visible. And so the edge that I'm pushing in my business is just putting myself on video and sharing my message more. Even though it's hard, just continuing to lean into it, because I know that it gets easier the more you do it, just like everything. And so you have to kind of break through that uncomfortable zone. And so I'm definitely pushing the edges with video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that, Mel. And one thing I appreciate about you, just like knowing you for so long, is you're just like not willing to be fake, like at all. I know, like I have this memory of us like talking about video, and I don't remember what exactly we were all doing, but you're just like, I just refuse to be fake. Like, I just can't be fake. And yet at the same time, I think there's an important point in that. Of course, you know that I love video, since I've like, part of my evolution has been like being a video coach. And then I still help brand video clients with the brand video clients that we do have. I really just appreciate that you're just willing to continue to show up because of that like powerful connection. And, you know, I know I've watched your videos and I've been on some of your trainings, and like your content is so good. So I feel like for you, when you just show up and be yourself, like you deliver your content, it's just so valuable for your people. Like you really just don't hold back. So whenever,
right. And then it's like, it doesn't matter if you mess up or you screw up your words, or you say the wrong thing. And, you know, we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially when we're not used to it. And when you just show up with valuable content, like all of those things don't really matter as much as you think it does before you jump.
Right. Yeah. It's like taking that pressure off of you and just bringing it back to like, what am I here to teach and how am I here to serve? So yeah. Awesome. What about you, Miss Adria? What are your visibility edges you're leaning into?
Yeah, I love this question. So I would say that for me, since I'm a messaging person, and so much of my work and how I show up in the world and what I'm doing with clients is around communication and their messaging, and what are they saying and what are they talking about, and how are they saying things that light them up. And it's just, for me, I feel like right now my edge has been, well, I'm going through another piece of evolution right now. And so it's been like, okay, let me clarify again what I'm standing for right now. And because this is consistently something that happens in my business, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this since this is an evolution episode. But like, I feel like I'm at that point of, let me realign again what my messaging is. But I think the actual edge for me is more around, how do I show up specifically for me on social media? Because on my podcast, I feel like really great at connecting, and just like, I just love recording episodes on my podcast. But on social media, it's like, how do I show up, like specifically Instagram, I'll just name a platform, in a way that I am like still being vulnerable and still being real and me, and including the messaging and the things that I want to say that matter, that when I'm on my soapbox, and just like having things that are light. Like, how do I have all of those pieces all happening and kind of like have it just feel really natural? Because I'm really good at getting on my soapbox. I'm really good at like the messaging piece, the like this is what I'm feeling called to say, and this is why this matters, and all of those pieces. And then I'm really good at being vulnerable and being messy and showing the behind the scenes. But sometimes it's the lighter pieces, and sometimes it's like how all those pieces connect together and showing you and that visibility that that sometimes I get a little bit stuck of like, what should I which part should I share? Like
Oh my gosh, this is so good. I love you ladies. I'm like, these are such good answers. Wow, Adria, this is like, I feel like this is such a good topic that we could like dive into all on its own, of like, really what I'm hearing you say, and what I do love so much about you, is that you really care. You care so much about just like really feeling that connection with your people. And part of that caring is showing different parts of like your life, and the vulnerability and the fun sides. And then there's this piece which I can relate to around like, well, how do you not go like into kind of the extreme of just one thing, but you're actually like continuing to kind of like do that dance of like tying it back to your business, because obviously this is a business and we need to make money, right? But then still like doing those connection points and like sharing about your life. And like, I know for me personally, I like very easily go into the extremes. So like, I'm either like all soapbox or like all personal. And then it's like been a challenge for me to like figure out how to weave those together.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. I feel like that's a really good reminder for everybody, just when we're considering visibility, it's like all those pieces, and really giving ourselves permission to like have those lighter pieces as well, which, you know, are usually like some of the ones that do the best on my social media. Not that I care a ton, but of course, like I am hooked in a little bit to those numbers of like, yeah, wow, that post just did really good. And so if you are hooked into the numbers, remember that the lighter pieces sometimes do better.
Well, and I think that like sometimes the lightness sparks conversation.
Yeah.
And so like maybe like not as much as like the numbers as it like pulls people out to like comment or to say something back to you. Whereas like a lot of times we can, like if we're, you know, I know you and me, like we're just like, we want to go deep.
Yeah.
and so sometimes it's like harder for someone to engage with it. But if it's like easy, then it kind of like allows you to create a lighter level of connection, which then creates comfort to go deeper too. So yeah, so it's kind of like all those pieces. But you know, it's funny because I think this is an important conversation to have as well, especially when we're talking about evolution, because I know like a lot of my clients and a lot of the ladies in my group program especially are like, they think, or even my podcast listeners, like they tend to think, and probably yours are the same, and probably Melissa, yours are the same too, that like we show up perfectly, or that we don't struggle with any of these things, especially if what we're supporting people around is this type of thing. Like I'm supporting people around messaging. So like I should always know exactly what to say at every moment. And like, you know, and that's not necessarily the case, you know, like it's still like, okay, like how am I, it's always that checking in and that like stepping into the visibility edges that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because what we're great at teaching is what we've struggled with the most. I mean, that's true. Just like, yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Mel?
Yeah, absolutely. And just because you learn something doesn't mean you're going to do it perfectly every single time. You know, like when I was in school, I played tennis and I was pretty good, but then you don't get to a point where you don't need a coach anymore. Like, because then you're going to like make progress and then take a couple steps back. And so like just sharing that process is so valuable so that they don't feel like they're alone, right? That's like kind of the point, is that like, hey, I understand because I go through this too. I might be at a different level and like a couple steps ahead of you, but we're both like human beings. And it's not about perfection.
Yeah, I love this. Good. So let's give people just like a little bit of insight as to how we've evolved. So just kind of like the bullet points of each of our evolution, and then we can kind of dive into some of the, what I think are the bigger questions around like evolving and why we evolved and how that all happened, and you know, like why it's important, and just really peel back the layers. But why don't we first start with like just kind of, you know, bullet points. So do you want to go first, Adria?
Ooh, okay, sure. Why, thank you.
You're welcome, darling.
So, okay, woo, evolution. So back to when I was a baby.
That feels big, right?
So for me, I so love this topic because like I'm such a huge believer that each point along the way becomes a part of who we are now. And I have, you know, I have a couple careers before what I'm doing now. And then even within what I've done now, like what the work I'm doing now with people, I have this evolution as a business owner, and every piece informs like how I'm showing up now. So I would say, so the Cliff's Notes fast run through before I became a business owner, I had a degree and was in a career in architecture. Didn't feel like that was quite an alignment for me, and ended up kind of seeking outside of that. Like I was getting really nerdy about like botany and plant ecology, and ended up going into my master's and doing work around that. Worked in that field for a long time for the government, and felt like there was like this pull that there was. I just wanted to use my voice more. I wanted to show up more and be seen more and make a bigger, faster difference than I could do, you know, in the government. Like it was beautiful, meaningful work,
Red
but
tape.
like, yeah, exactly. I was just like feeling that. And when I first stepped into, I wouldn't say it's the first time I stepped into business, but it's the first time that it was like me. This is me, the face and the brand behind my business. And I was doing it as a website. It was like plant-based living because I was really passionate about that. And I would say that I was really much more of a blogger than, like, I knew from the beginning I wanted it to be a business because I was really into the idea of, this, what a lot of us get into business for, like this freedom of our lifestyle and calling the shots and all this different stuff. And so I knew I wanted to be a business, but I think I was having a lot of struggle in the part of the business, which is actually kind of what makes it a business, which is getting paid for something. and so for like probably a couple of years or so, I was doing that work, and I was really resisting working with anyone one-on-one and being a coach. And then I kind of came into this point of my life, and I think it was around the time that I probably around the time I met both of you guys. And I was taking this speaker training program with Alexia Vernon, who I know is all of our friend. And it was so much around TED style speaking and around like having a message and a voice and sharing that. And I think that really started to shift things in a different direction. So I moved into working with people around, working specifically with business owners, women entrepreneurs, around taking care of themselves to take care of their business. And that's what I did my TEDx talk around. That's what I started my first podcast around. And in doing all those different pieces, like it was kind of that evolution from, okay, I'm still talking about wellness, but now I get to like really support people who have voices. And so that feels really good. And then eventually, after I had kind of like having done the TEDx talk, having launched the podcast, and having felt like I had built a really solid brand and message, the awareness of that, like, that's actually what I was really good at. That's what I was better at helping people with and what I really loved. And so for me, and then that was like a next level of evolution and alignment in both my message and in what I was doing in my business, was like stepping with both feet into that. Like, okay, I'm going to help people with that. And that's what I've been doing for the last few years. And that's what feels right and in alignment. And that's where things started really shifting into gear in terms of the clients I was working with, in terms of how I was showing up as a business owner, and my own voice, my own message, like all those different pieces. And even within that, I mean, like, I won't go into it right now, but there's like fine tuning pieces even within that. So in the last few years that I've been doing, this work, there's been all these moments where I'm evolving. I'm like, ooh, getting feedback of, that, like, I don't think I want to work with that type of person. They're not the right fit. This is what I'm feeling called to work with, or this is the style I want to do, or like within messaging, I don't really like beginners isn't the right fit. I really want to work with people who are, evolving and need to like refine and align the message that's right for the next evolution. And so there's like these different layers in terms of evolution. Like the high level, and then the like little within what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And I can remember back to the TEDx event that you spoke at, since I was an organizer, and I remember you coming over to my house and practicing your talk, and me just being like, wow, she's so good at structuring her talk. Like, and I tend to be like a crazy person at like taking people's talks apart. And you were just so good at that message. Like, you just had it all the pieces there to really be that deliverer of your message at the time, which was feed your hustle, right? And now how like your message has been that piece that's like carried through what you're now helping people with. I just wanted to reflect that to you, because I can remember so clearly sitting on my couch and watching you do your talk and being like, damn, like, she's a messenger.
I remember that too. I remember that moment.
Yeah.
But it's funny
Awesome.
how you identified it like years back, but it took so many years for it to kind of like sink in and actually click, you know, but like
Yeah.
you might have like planted that seed.
Right.
Right. We never know.
And I think sometimes we need permission. Like for me, I didn't step into supporting people directly around their messaging until I was working with a coach who like reflected it back to me, and she had me do kind of like a timeline of my achievements and what I've done. And that's kind of why like when I run my challenges, I always have people do an achievement inventory because there's like so many clues in there. But she had me do that. And then when she was looking at it, she was like, Adria, I feel like what you've been good at is the messaging. Why couldn't you help people with that? And I was like, no, I couldn't do that. That's, you know, so yeah.
What
like,
held you back from that? I'm curious, like what held you back initially from feeling like you couldn't help people with that?
What held me back is that everything I had been doing to that point was, even though I was like talking about, my messaging was around people's businesses because it was like talking about their lifestyle when they're in a business and going into a launch and all this stuff. I was still talking about like self-care, and I was still talking about, you know, the feed your hustle stuff, like the habits and the food and the movement and all that kind of those pieces. And so in my mind, like helping people with their business, like directly on their business was like too big of a jump. But it's hilarious though, when you look back at it, because I remember when, the writing piece and the editing piece, especially the editing and seeing the, like the connecting dots and like words and shaping things and all of that has always been what my biggest strength is. It's always been what it is. And I remember at one point in my business when it was early on and I was like struggling to make money because I really wasn't giving anyone some things to pay me for. I remember my ex-husband, I remember him saying, like, why can't you do a business that's around your strengths? Why can't you do a business that has to do with writing, that has to do with words, and that you help people edit and like, and hone things and refine things? And I was like, I don't know. I couldn't do that because I was so in this, like, this is my bubble, you know? And it really did take someone giving me permission that like, hey, Adria, you could do that. Like you can help people with that. Like you're good at it. Like you have the skills, like why you've done it for yourself. Like why would you not be allowed?
This is so good. I want to come back to this piece around like why we avoid our strengths. Because I feel like I have a lot of like shares around that too. But let's get to Mel. Let's hear your kind of bullet points and your journey of how you've evolved in business.
Yeah. So my business really started over 8 years ago, and I created a bath and body line where I would literally hand make soaps and lotions and bath milk in my kitchen. And that was my start in business. And I did it because I loved products. I loved baths. I love self-care. We all have a self-care connection. We've all been a self-care coach at one time in our evolution, all three of us. And that's probably what connects us, because we love doing things like spas and just like peaceful things. But I really started because I loved the products, and I got going, and I struggled a lot locally with like doing farmers markets and just going about it like the slow, long, hard way. And then I sort of heard about Amazon, and I bought invested in this program that showed me how to take my products and sell them on Amazon. And that's really when my business took off, and I was doing really well. And I was utilizing like ads on Amazon, pay-per-click ads. And that was fueling 90% of my sales. And so then what was interesting is, while I was learning about business and investing in like different programs, I sort of discovered this world that was like an online coach. And I didn't even know that this was a thing that you could get paid for. And there's people that are just, getting paid to help other people in business. And so my first entry point into coaching was really being a health coach. I was really passionate about health, through my products. And then what's funny about evolution is that every level you take, you get more clarity of what you want and what you don't want. And you sort of like hone your strengths along the way. So when I first really decided that like I wanted to work with people building their businesses, I didn't really know what niche I had or where I wanted to hone in. And, you know, that is something that I don't recommend for just kind of starting without a niche. But if you don't know what you want to hone in, sometimes just talking about what you're passionate about and what you know about now will help you get to that next level and help you find that clarity. And so that's what I did. Like for the first year, I would just kind of help people do what I knew how to do. And some of it was, you know, helping them sell on Amazon. Some of it was like productivity and like systems and like the back end of running a business. And so my business went through a lot of evolutions. And once I sort of honed in on what was bringing me clients, and that was when I was running my Facebook group. I just launched my Facebook group. All of my clients were coming from my Facebook group. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can teach other people how to get clients from their Facebook group. So I sort of shifted into that direction. And then that kind of evolved a couple of times, even in the last year. But what really hit home for me was kind of going back to where I found success in my first business. And that was utilizing more ads and more like internet marketing. And that's where I really decided that like my strength is more in the strategic, you know, figuring out how to put an ad up and optimize it and bring in clients and make sales that way. And so that's really when I got into funnels, and I was starting to build business funnels for my business just to sell my products. And it just sort of took off from there. And now I really honed in on working with digital products, people who want to sell digital products and create courses, and teaching them how to do that online and leveraging their time. But when you kind of look back, you can kind of see the pieces that you take with you, right? Every evolution, you take what you want and you leave the rest, and you just keep moving forward. And I'm sure a year from now, 2 years from now, we'll be in another evolution and we'll take those pieces. And so I just think it's something that is a part of business, and to embrace it and not look at it like a failure or like, oh, I tried that and it didn't work, so now I'm moving on to the next thing.
Yeah. I love that, Mel. And I remember when we all like first were meeting up for our like regular co-working dates, however many years ago that was. I'm so bad with time. I'm like, I don't know when that was. And you had like your, you know, your like product business, but then I remember when you bought like your URL, I think I remember that, like you bought your URL for your name. And you're like, I don't know, should I go in under my name? And I'm like, yes, go in under your name. Like,
right, because you always evolve. That's like one of the smartest decisions that you can make, is just brand yourself, because your people will come with you.
Yeah. Ooh, I think that's a really good point. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about like this fear of like, will my people come with me? I feel like that's a really like nice entry point. So first I'm curious, have either of you had that fear? And if so, how have you dealt with giving yourself permission to evolve and change?
Oh my gosh.
What? You want to go first, Adria?
She's bubbling over there.
Yeah.
So yes, I've had this fear. As I went along, since, you know, this feels like the third list I've had, I'll just say, like twice I've had to burn down a list, shut a Facebook group, like close down an old community that I was building because I was evolving like in a really big way. And so the first time, like the first one, I think it was like letting go of a list of like, I don't know, 2,000-3,000 people, and letting go of, you know, what I like I had built to that point, you know, and the website that I had built to that point, which had a lot of traffic and all these different things. And it was scary. It was like a scary thing, but it was also something that felt necessary. Like I needed to let go of that piece in order to fully step into the next piece. And the second time that I did that, letting go of a list, letting go of Facebook group and community and everything, was when I shifted. Like that's when I made the shift from Feed Your Hustle to messaging work. And that was letting go of something I'd done a TEDx talk on. Like, so that felt like scary in a different way of like, this is something I've been a messenger for. This is something I stood for. And I still stand for it. Like I still really believe in my talk. And then it was also like, okay, I have this podcast, like Feed Your Hustle, my podcast. I was like, it means shifting that now too. And letting go of, my listeners there, because they're not likely the same exact people who want to listen to Unforgettable, which is my show around your personal brand and around like showing up as a messenger. And so like, I do feel like there's like this element of fear that comes along with that of like what could happen, or like what, am I going to be able to build this again? Or, I worked hard for this. But I also think that it's necessary, because when I tried to hold on to like pieces of my old messaging, for example, like when I was shifting from Feed Your Hustle to being a message clarity coach, I was like, contriving everything. I was like, okay, so let's see how Feed Your Hustle fits in with what I'm talking about now. So it's like this tree, and the roots are your self-care, and the branches are your visibility, and the trunk is your messaging. But that was just like rather than just being clear and saying what things are and just talking about what I stand for now and like allowing it to evolve, like that was like muddying it. That was making it messy. And so one of the things, I mean, this is what, I tell my people too, is to step into what you're stepping into. Like you got to step into yourself to step into your message, and you have to step forward into like where you're evolving in order to keep moving forward.
Right. Oh my God. I can so relate, because I think I've changed more times than both of you probably combined. And I appreciate you saying that, Adria, about like the letting go of your list, especially because I have this vivid memory of like, a few years ago, sitting on like Ben's couch. He was like getting ready to, eventually like move here, but it was one of my trips like back and forth to before he lived in Santa Cruz here with me, and being like, I need a drink, like, because I'm about to delete this 3,000 person list. And for me, the transition was going from kind of multiple variations of like self-care and women's empowerment and relationships. Those were kind of like my evolution. And it was really easy for me to build my list. I didn't do any paid advertising during that time. I mean, that's not true. I tried, but it got me like 2 people. I needed Melissa back then, but I didn't, I don't know. I hired somebody. It didn't help. And that was so hard. Like I still like have some sadness around like, oh gosh, like that list of people. And at the same time, I think for me, like it was so clear that I had to go towards what felt most energizing in the sense of working with people. Because it was so much fun for me to like build my list around relationship and self-care and like do free challenges. And like I got a lot of attention and a lot more interviews actually than I get now for whatever reason. But I think that's important for me to say, because ultimately, like I want to feel really freaking awesome helping people, when they're my clients too, and like energized by that.
Oh my
and
God.
I think that's like a key distinction, exactly right?
Yeah.
Like, and so like the numbers were nice, and my list is much smaller now, and like I'm working on growing it. But for me, it was so important to make that switch so that I felt like, yes, I'm doing my work, at least my work right now, in helping people in their businesses. So I'm curious
that was the same thing for me too. Just so you know,
yeah.
Like that was like exactly totally resonating.
Right. Melissa, what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, I definitely think that you have to like completely let it go when you do evolve, like trying to fit it into the old mold or still, and that's sort of like a scarcity mindset where you're afraid to let something go to like step into the next level, right? You need to like make space for it. And so I've never like gotten rid of a list, because I didn't even start building my list until I was working with like, the same type of person. And I think that as you evolve, as long as your ICA is the ideal client is like the same same person, then that's a decision that you make. And that's based on like what you feel. Like some people feel really aligned with just starting from scratch, and some people want to bring, you know, them with you. So it's like a person, I don't think there's any right or wrong, but just when you make that decision, I think you should just go all in and not worry about what you're letting go, and just look at like how you're stepping in and how you're going to attract the right people now.
Yeah. And to clarify, like burning down a list like that for me, and then I think for you too, Jess, like that happened when we were completely pivoting into a completely different person we were helping. But like I have evolved I've evolved like within this many times in the last few years. And yeah, I'm not letting go of the people who've come along.
Yeah. And I think one, and I'm curious if you guys have any stories around this. One important thing to point out for me personally is that some of the people have come with me through the self-care, through relationship coaching. And when I switched to business, like they became my private clients because they were like, okay, I want to hire you now. And I just want to let you know that I also really appreciate that you have this experience in like relationships and self-care. And so that almost like if we want to really show the bigger picture of like us as a full human, which we are, right? And like this goes for everybody. Like there's these different layers of us that make us unique. And that's part of our journey and part of what appeals to certain types of people working with us, right? So do you guys have any kind of like stories like that?
No specific stories, but it does make you more dynamic, and it helps people understand your brand more as they kind of come along with you. Like for instance, like the things that you were interested in or you were passionate about a year ago, like chances are you didn't completely trash it, right? So I was a self-care coach. I'm not against self-care, like it's part of who I am and what I do with my clients as well. So it helps give you another level of expertise. And so you can help your clients in more ways, is more of like a holistic approach.
Yeah.
And to piggyback on that, like for me, I've definitely, since, you know, not burning out is part of what I used to help people do. And that influences my work now. Like it influences how I create my programs, how I deliver content to my people, how I'm supporting my clients, and like what I'm recognizing in how they're showing up, and simplifying, and like so a lot of those elements, like they infuse into it. And I find myself still weaving into my messaging, like still talking about things like that I might have talked about before, just because they're what I really care about. So I want to share things like that I'm doing, that how I'm moving my body, or a realization I had about like how I implemented a habit to kind of keep my energy good. Or like I did an episode on my podcast around the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship and how to kind of like take care of yourself through it. And so I think those things are still there. They just become conversations. They become like a piece in the conversation instead of like the core message on top.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I think that's really so important to weave in those parts of ourselves and to not hold back. And there's always a way. This is like my public relations brain, since that's what I got my degree in. Like, you know, back in the day, they used to call like them like, you know, spin things. I'm good at spinning things, but in the more like, you know, integrity way, it's like, it's really just like tying things together. Like everything can be related. And it's just, are you able to dig for that lesson, the greater lesson, and how it applies to your work? And I think that is like a way that when we talk about evolving as entrepreneurs, like marketing is moving towards even more of that. Like how can you actually apply kind of everyday things that you're experiencing and tell better stories? Because that's really what stories are. It's like tying in things from your life into why they matter for what you're like big mission is, or your big message. Do you guys have thoughts on that? I see Mel, you're nodding. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just saying that sometimes it's easier for people to get the lesson when you compare it to something not so big and serious, like comparing it to something like food or health, or using it as an example so they can see it clearer. So it's, using it as metaphors, that it just helps to understand better, I think.
Yeah. What do you guys think the hardest part about evolving as an entrepreneur is?
Ooh, okay. You ask these questions, then I get this like hit of like, okay, I know what it is. I think for me, it's the feeling that you start feeling when you know it's time to evolve. Like, and I think it's starting to come to recognize that that's what that means. But it's like the feeling uninspired about what you're saying, the feeling a little bit murky or like robotic, or like you're saying things because these are the marketable things you're supposed to say in order to get clients. And you just get into that space where you just don't feel good in what you're saying. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, for a lot of my clients, it means you stop blocking clients, right? You don't like want anyone to sign up to work with you because you don't want to do that work anymore. And that starts to like compound into this like kind of burnout. And so a lot of my journey with evolution has been kind of like those things happening, and then learning how to recognize when I'm on the brink of that, when that's starting to happen, and just to evolve at that point. To like, okay, like this is the sign inside of me that means it's time to evolve into, for me, like, cause I think in terms of messaging, how you're showing up and what you're saying, what you're standing for, like, it's time for me to evolve into my next level of messaging. Like, so I can make my next level of impact. And so I think that's the hardest thing, but it's also like a beautiful thing to start to recognize and lean into.
Yeah. Oh my God. Once again, I 100% agree. And it's like the worst. I feel like it's the worst and the best, just like you said, because it's like, and it really is how it's paying attention, because it's so easy, especially if you're making money and doing well. Like, so I know you mentioned like blocking clients, and I've definitely done that, subconsciously blocking, because I'm like, I'm over this niche. I don't want to help people in this anymore. However, I've also had the flip side where like I'm getting clients. So for example, when I did I was a visibility and video coach. Visibility is still part of my coaching, but now I don't say I'm a video coach anymore. And the reason is because I was noticing people were coming to me and wanting so much of the technical side. And I did not want to help with that. Like, I really want, like, it was like, no matter what my messaging was, people just expect that when you're a video coach, right? And so I was still getting people coming to me, but they wanted something that I wasn't willing to offer. And no matter how much I could share my messaging around like, you're really smart at like technology, it was people were still coming to me like wanting that kind of support, which is fine. Like, and there's tons of video coaches to do that. And it was so uncomfortable because I had a lot of shame around like, oh my God, I only did that for a year. And I was like, oh, I have to switch again. I can so feel it. It's like that feeling of, okay, here we go. And then for me, I got like, I just started paying attention to like, okay, what feels like super energizing that people are coming to me for, but like, duh, I'm naturally good at. And it was like, I had to be hit on the head because my background is marketing. Like, that's what I did in corporate for 10 fucking years. Like, and I avoided doing that. So I want to talk about this too. And Mel, we'll get you in there on the like hardest part that you think, but I avoided helping people with their marketing and business because I felt like it was backtracking to like I could do that in corporate, and it's so much easier in corporate. Like, yeah, there's a ceiling to your income, but like, it's so much easier because you don't have to like run your own business, like for me, it was like just super easy. So well, like, why would I want to do that?
I'm surprised that you say that though, Jess, because you are someone who, like, when we look at our personality types and like, all three of us did this like personality assessment, and you were the star. and that's like Oprah. And so I'm like really about that, because I feel like you are a personality who needs to be like, I think the way you shine is when you are being visible and when you are like the personal brand. And like, I feel that way for myself too. Like, I think that that was one of my motivations in like, even if I did have your background and I could have done like supported people in their businesses in my career, like I still felt this calling to be seen. Still felt this calling to like show up as myself and to have a voice and to like to build that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you do too, from what I mean, I know.
So you're saying, I'm not quite understanding what you're saying. Are you saying that you're surprised because
that you would say
like
that like I could have done that help when I was in corporate, but really like you are so like amazing at being visible and at showing yourself and being that role model and all those things. And when you're in corporate, when you were, you know, at your position there, like you were running a team within a company,
right.
but you weren't like showing up as you. You were, I mean, you were showing up as you, but you weren't building that brand and like saying those deep, meaningful things and like all those pieces. Right? It's different.
Yeah. So it's different. It is totally different. And I just couldn't make that connection. Like outside, I was so like far removed from like my natural talent because I mean, I'm still not 100% sure, but I think what I can like make sense of is it was just like, for whatever reason, that felt like, well, I was just going to be doing what I was like doing in corporate, which is not true. Like I've made it my own thing. And so it's really interesting, I think, for all of us to have this question around like, why do we sometimes resist the easiest path? It's like right there. So Mel, I want to go to you on this piece around what you think is the hardest part around evolving, and if you want to chime in around this, like, why do we avoid our strengths piece? Because I know you're good at leaning up to your strengths.
Yeah, so definitely for me, it's the starting from scratch, having to rebuild everything. Like that feeling where it just feels like, oh my God, I'm starting like all this work that I've done. I'm just like starting over my offers, my copy, like everything needs to be redone. And sometimes it can be a lot of work and it can be really overwhelming. And for me, that's like the thing that kind of, well, it's just easier to just keep doing what you're doing because you have all this equity built up in your business, right? With all these things that you've been building. So it's definitely all the work and starting from scratch but realistically, you're not starting from the same place. Like you're always starting from scratch at a different level, at a higher level. It's like evolving sort of feels like leveling up. Like it's to me that they're the same, right? So you're evolving, but you're also leveling up.
Yeah.
Totally. They like, yeah, I think that's the beautiful way to do it. If what your evolution is the next level, like that's what business is about.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And I think I just want to chime in here, the importance of like also listening to ourselves. Like Adria, I love your example of like, you had to have a coach pointed out to you, like all your like highlights of like accomplishments. Like you're an amazing messenger and you're like a messaging coach. You need to help people around this. For me, I think there's like two sides here. I had to ignore what like coaches were telling me to do. So like, for me, I became a relationship coach essentially because I got on stage at an event when I was a self-care coach, and I pointed out all my strengths, and she said, "You're a relationship coach." And I was like, well, that sounds fun. Cause like, I'm easily inspired. And it was fun. And I believe that evolution, again, I love what you said, Mel, about leveling up. Cause I truly believe like that was like for my own, part, like I helped people, I had clients and stuff. So that was for, my business as well. And like, I was able to help people. But for me, when I look back and what made that worth it was that it was ultimately for me, like learning about relationships and then meeting Ben, my current partner. So I had to give myself permission. And then even when I was considering switching from relationship coach to like business, my current coach at that time, another person, was like, no, you need to stay a relationship coach because you just attracted like the love of your life. Duh. Why wouldn't you like stay? And I am so glad that I listened to myself in that moment. And I was like, no, that's not the right thing, even though it all mentally looks like it should be the right thing.
Yeah.
So just wanted to interject on that piece. You guys have any thoughts?
Yeah, that's so true. It's like it's like we always look for the answers outside of ourselves. And we don't give ourselves enough credit to know the right thing. And so like, coaches are so valuable, having a mentor so valuable, but they're not God. Like there's not one way to build a business. There's not one right path for you. And so when you do get like support from someone, always checking in your intuition, and like that takes a lot of courage to be able to listen to that, Jess, with, you're paying this person a lot of money to coach you. That that takes a lot of courage to do that, for sure.
Yeah, it was scary because I remember being like, oh my God, like this doesn't make sense, but I could just feel it inside of me, like that energetic pull of like,
right.
This
and
is
you should
complete.
never act against that feeling. That is supersedes everything,
I agree. And I know all of us like really coach from that place of like, I'm sharing, information with you, and what do you feel like is the right next step for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way sometimes you need something to get started with. Like if someone says, hey, go out and do a webinar, you're like, how the hell do I do that? Like, what do I do first? Like, so giving someone a framework and then letting them know that you can make changes and you can make adjustments, but here's something to get started with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adria. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that's exactly like when I'm supporting people in their messaging. A lot of times, like if you've been feeling unclear on what it is you're saying, what you're standing for, who your people are, like that deeper level of clarity, then like a lot of times what happens is my people will come to me and they'll just like want this clarity and think that that's like the last time they'll ever need clarity. like clarity, like capital letters clarity. And it's like I have this like continual education process that's happening on my podcast and with my people of like that this is all an evolution, and that even with your message or how you're talking about things or what you stand for, how you're showing up in your, what you're saying in your marketing, like even with the people you're like the type of who your people are, like there's this continual evolution that happens because you need to keep listening to how it's feeling for you and getting more and more information and then coming from that level. So when I talk about like realigning your messaging, it's like aligning from like, even if you have been in business for, years and you've been successful and you've gotten clients and all these different things, it's like you still come to a point where you're like, okay, well, what's my next level? And what am I evolving into? And you still need to do that work of like tapping in and getting that level of clarity from where you're at, because you've gotten more information, you've had more input at this point. And on those lines, I didn't have anything quite as extreme as with you, Jess. But when I shifted into messaging, the coach I was working with at the time, who gave me that push, which is like I'm so grateful for. Yeah. But she also, what she pushed me into, or what she like called me into or like saw for me was visibility. Like that's what she saw.
Right.
Was like, you need to be a visibility coach. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I'm not really good at getting numbers. I'm not, I'm not like a publicist, or like, there's like a lot of people in this space who, I don't quite know, but I went with that. And that's why there's been so many evolutions within what I do. Cause it's like me finding, okay, that's not quite right. Let me step into this. And it's so funny because at the beginning of that whole process, I had in my mind messaging, like I could do message.
Wow.
But she was like really, like that was a really strong thing. And so that's kind of where I started leading with. And then by me listening, it kind of like fine-tuned into what it is now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm now remembering. I see Mel is remembering too, that all that happened. Yeah. It's so awesome because everything really happens for a reason. And the more that we just like tune into ourselves and give ourselves permission to just like start somewhere and keep leveling up and keep evolving and giving ourselves permission to like change directions. Like there's that energetic flow, I feel like, that just like the floodgates open. Like I know for you, Mel, I remember like sitting at, I don't remember what event it was that we were at, and you were like showing me like your course like blueprints and like how to create like, and you were so lit up and so excited, and that was like maybe a year ago, and now you're like helping people create their like signature systems, right? Like that's and so just like remembering those moments, and sometimes it takes just mentors and friends and biz besties like the three of us to like reflect to each other, and sometimes it'll land immediately, sometimes we'll take a little bite and then it'll like evolve into a whole sandwich, but just starting somewhere, I feel like, and giving ourselves permission is like one of the big messages of what we've been jamming on so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do what's fun. Like, cause chances are, what is fun for you? Like like talking about the blueprints, like I would spend hours like in the evening with a glass of wine, just like making, like watching TV. It was so fun for me, but that's typically what is your zone of genius and what you're naturally good at and what your gifts are. Like, what is fun? What do you feel passionate about? Like shouldn't be hard. Like, I don't believe that anything that we do should be hard. I think it should flow and it should be easy and it should be fun and we should be excited about doing these things. And if you're not, then something needs to shift, because it should be fun.
Yeah. So that's kind of like even though we're talking about like just start doing something, like I think it does start with taking a moment to kind of tap in and notice that and kind of like tap in and get a deeper level of clarity of like where you're at right now, and then start leading from that and let like the feedback come your way.
Mm-hmm.
This is such an important point. I was seeing somebody who's a really high level like coach in our space that posted something about like push and hustle and slay it, and like saying how other people basically have it all wrong, like she's telling the truth, and like you have to like push and push through, and I'm just like I know, I'm like, that's awesome, and she's made a lot of money, and yet I also know that she's like struggling from health issues and like all these other things. So it just like confuses me. So I'm curious, like I love that the three of us, three of us, we're all like reflections of each other, but the three of us are on this page. And I think it's because we've been there in the push, and we've been like trying to make certain things work. And that's been part of our evolution, is just realizing that where the fun is and where the excitement is, like of course there's always going to be stuff in business that we don't want to do, but for the majority, like why are we doing this work if it's not lighting us up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I spent many years working my ass off, like no joke. I mean, I didn't leave the house. I mean, I'm an introvert naturally. And so when you give me a computer and like, let me do things online, like I won't get dressed, I won't take showers. And it didn't work. And I remember like a couple of years into it, I was talking to my boyfriend and I was like, Michael, like, I can't work harder. I can't work longer. Like I'm doing every single thing that I can possibly do. There's something that's missing. There's missing piece that I don't even know what the problem is, but it's holding me back. And that piece was this, like the flow, the fun, the ease, the kind of working in your zone of genius, because that's where the magic is. Why do something that you're not good at? Why do that? Like you're spending so much time learning something that you're not even going to do. Like for me, like when I used to sell my products, like I used to edit all of my pictures that I used to take all of my pictures by myself. I used to spend 10 hours edit. I'm not ever going to be a photo editor ever. Then once I realized that I can outsource this on Upwork for like $20 and get like all these, I was just cringing at the time that I wasted trying to do something that felt not fun at all. It felt like torture. And it wasn't my area of genius. And so like I made a lot of shifts last year, January of 2018. Like at the end of the year, I was so tired. I was so just done with working. Like my work felt hard. I knew something was going to like happen. Like I was going to have a burnout. I was going to just like leave the business and go get a job. Like something was going to happen. And I just decided that like, I'm going to take naps every day. I'm going to, instead of working like 40, 50 hours a week, I'm going to work like 20 to 30. I'm going to just relax and have fun and like not work so hard. And what's funny is that month, January, was the biggest month in my business to date. And it just felt so easy. And so it kind of, something kind of clicked in me, like working hard is not the answer. Like making sure that you have high energy and you're able to put the right energy in the right things, but then don't worry about everything else, right? That's all you have to do. Just put the right energy in the right things and everything will kind of fall into place. And making sure that you're having fun is really key for sure.
I love that. I love that, Mel. And it's such a good example. We need more examples like this. I feel like for women entrepreneurs or just entrepreneurs in general, that like, like doing the right things, the most important things, and resting, it can actually still bring you, taking care of yourself. Like I had to learn that. I mean, I've always taken pretty good care of myself. I've never like burnt out or anything. But what I did used to do was like prioritize other people's needs over me. So for me, one of the biggest lessons has been boundaries, you know, in my own life and business, and really giving myself permission to only take care of me. And I know that's been a big thing that even my clients are still baffled by, like, oh, you don't get up until like 9 or 10, but what if I have a need? Like, I'm like, I'm here for you, and it's going to take me at least 24 hours to respond. And like, we have this understanding though from the beginning, right? And whenever I'm encouraging them to do the same, there's just like a lot of, you know, kind of pushback. So it's like those baby steps of, I feel like people have to really lean into a lot of like trust and letting go of like, you know, it's almost like you have to do it in order to see the proof that it actually helps.
Yeah, that's true. And sometimes you don't know what's missing until all of a sudden you feel what it's like to be like free and just like, oh my God, like I don't have a million things on my mind. Like we don't realize how it feels because you're like too deep in it now.
Man. Yeah. And you guys both know that I am someone who can be more anxious and can worry about things and like definitely can get stuck in all of that. And business has like, going into business definitely kind of exacerbated that, especially in the beginning of like, I'm going to work all the time so that I can make sure I'm doing all the things. And maybe these like voices in my head will go away, or maybe I'll feel better when it's done, but there's like no done. And so one of the things
there's no done.
One of the things I know, like the three of us have talked about a lot, is like, how do we set up our businesses in a way that feels good? And I think that is part of the evolution, is like, how can you actually have the energy to show up for your people? And for me, a lot of that has, in the last couple of years, as I've really been sinking into that, has come down to like, how do I need to schedule my time, like to give myself the time I need? And so for me, I alternate days where like Tuesdays and Thursdays typically are like talk days. They're typically if I'm doing an interview or if I'm having client calls or if I'm leading a group program, like they're on those days. And then I have like buffer days in between that are like creative energy for me. And like, what do I need to have, you know? And so like so much of it comes down to that. Like, since I work from home, my home office is here, like if I feel like I am in a funky place, I'll like get up and go take a bath in the middle of the workday. You know, it's like, how do you start to, as you're evolving, like take all that feedback and then let it infuse into how you are running yourself in your business.
Yeah. How you're running yourself. That's really, I think that's like an important key. As we're kind of wrapping up, we could talk forever. But I really like that, Adria. Like, how are you running yourself? Because I think that's such a huge part of evolution, is that like the things I see with my clients is like, you know, they've been in business for a while and they have reached that point where they're just like, I need to find a way to do this that feels good because I'm completely exhausted and I feel like a hamster on a wheel, you know, or they're in the place where they're like just uninspired and they're not really doing anything anymore, you know, and yet they know that like they want to continue this. So it's like those two different extremes. And I think that that tie point is what you just said of like, how are you like really taking care of yourself? And taking care of yourself fuels both of those, because it's like the boundaries if you're overworking, and the inspiration and what's going to nourish you if you're uninspired.
Yeah, because most of your good ideas, like most of my good ideas come when I'm not even working. When I'm
totally.
like in the bath. I mean, like, so you have to give yourself that space to just like, just like release your mind, like just be in the moment, like go for a walk, like have fun, do things. And those are when the best ideas come. Those are when like, you know, those divine downloads come for sure.
Or for me, it's the day after. The day after I gave myself permission to go to the spa or something.
Ooh, delayed gratification. I love it. Oh, this is so good, ladies. I love you guys so much. Just, oh man, we could talk on like so many different topics, and I'm really glad that we talked on evolution. And I'm curious if there's just anything else that you feel called to share, whether that's around just, you know, advice that you might give around evolving in business, or just anything left unsaid that you'd like to close with.
So I definitely believe in having the freedom to just try something. You know, you don't have to necessarily commit or just change your entire niche. You could just put out an offering that like has been sort of calling on your heart, and like, you know, oh my God, I really want to share this, but should I? And, you know, you can just like put it out there, see how it feels, see what the response is. And you don't, you know, you could put it out there in, you know, a little workshop. You don't necessarily have to make it like this big, huge shift. You could just try things new, and just having the freedom to just, hey, this seems like fun. Let me just put it out there and try it. Like you get so much feedback, and it really just helps you not put so much pressure on yourself to get it perfectly every single time. Like that's a really hard place to be, is this place of like indecision, or when you're just like, you know, in that like middle zone. And so when you don't put a lot of pressure on yourself, then you're able to evolve a lot easier and a lot faster.
Love it. 100%. Everything is an experiment. Just have fun. Beautiful, Mel. Thank you. And Adria, what about you? Last thoughts on evolution, or words that you just like to end with?
Yeah. So I would say that in evolution, I would just say to keep tuning in and noticing if you are in that space where you are feeling called to evolve, and that it's okay if you are, and to allow yourself to take a pause and maybe like have a self-care day, or like, or whatever it is you need to do that like lets you shift out of that energy for a moment, so you can open up that channel of receiving, so that you can kind of let come to you what it is that you actually are feeling called to step into, and give yourself the grace to take a pause to tap in deeper. So for me, a lot of times, like whether I'm evolving or whether I am in a place that I'm at right now, but I just want to go like deeper with it, or I've, you know, there's something more, and then it's like tapping into my people, like channeling, like who are my people, what are they feeling, like all that kind of stuff. And then taking a moment and kind of channeling like what is exciting me to say right now, and just like giving yourself the space to actually do that, versus just like moving forward, go, like allowing that.
I love that. Such great advice to end on. I'm so grateful for both of you. Go follow these ladies, get on their email list, you guys. There is links in the show notes at jessicatomlinson.com/show-11. This is episode 11. So make sure that you go and click on their links, and they're both amazing. I mean, I can't recommend these two enough. We all have like really complementary work together, and we've produced work together. So if that's not a high enough testimonial, I don't know what is. Plus, they're just my like soldier sisters. I know they'd go to like war for me. Not that we believe in war, but I love you guys so much. Yeah. Do you have something to say, Adria?
I was just gonna say, if that I have something I could share that could support them in a little bit of this evolution if they need a little bit of an experience to go through it.
For your niche clarity challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Adria has a niche, we're going to wrap it up, but you have a niche charity, niche clarity challenge.
Free niche clarity challenge.
Yes, a niche clarity challenge that she's run several times. And we have the link to that in the notes. And so make sure to definitely go over there and grab your spot in that. It's happening really, really soon if you're watching this when we go live with this show when it drops. And Melissa also has a gift over there. What's your gift called, Mel?
It's the Instant Income Blueprint.
Right. Great. Thank you. I just put it up, so I wasn't sure. I wanted to get it right. And both of those are great resources for you, all you lovely entrepreneurial ladies who are watching in your own evolution. Highly recommend it. So, all right, we will say goodbye for now and see you guys in the next show.